Hello, fellow movie lovers. Today, we're diving into the heartwarming and humorous world of the 2011 romantic comedy, A Secret Promise. Imagine this. A billionaire makes a promise to his dying father and trades in his extravagant life for the role of an ordinary chauffeur. But what happens when he starts falling for someone who has no idea who he really is? Will his hidden wealth tear them apart, or could it be the surprising twist that leads to their perfect ending? Stick around as we recap and review Pharaoh's laugh-out-loud adventures while posing as a man with nothing. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and smash the bell icon so you never miss another romantic comedy recap. Let's get into it. At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Pharaoh Olivetti, a self-made billionaire who wasn't born into wealth. Pharaoh spent his childhood in Italy, where he shared a close bond with his father. As he grew up, he moved to the United States and, through sheer hard work, became immensely successful. Despite his achievements, his father remained concerned about whether Pharaoh would ever find true love, as he was constantly surrounded by wealth and numerous women. Pharaoh is a powerful man, known globally for his womanizing ways. One day, while sitting with his friends, he receives a call from his mother in Italy, revealing that his father is on his deathbed. Without hesitation, Pharaoh takes a flight to Italy to see his father one last time. Upon their emotional reunion, Pharaoh's father, struggling to speak, asks for one last wish. He requests that Pharaoh go far away from his business, wealth, and everything he owns, and live as if he were homeless, without any money, for at least a month. Although Pharaoh tries to avoid answering, he eventually promises to fulfill his father's dying wish. After his father's passing, Pharaoh expresses his care and love for his mother before leaving her. Back in his office, he informs his secretary that he will be leaving for a month. Being a powerful billionaire, with each hour potentially earning millions, this was a difficult decision for him. To ensure his anonymity on this journey, he swaps identities with his driver, Claude. On the plane to New York, we meet an arrogant man who causes a lot of trouble for a flight attendant. Unable to tolerate his behavior, she teaches him a lesson by slapping a potato he had complained about, as if it were a child. This incident amuses everyone on the flight, including Pharaoh. Pharaoh arrives in the city with only a single bag and hitches a ride with a truck driver. Meanwhile, the same arrogant man from the plane gets picked up by a woman who happens to be his realtor. Unlike the arrogant man, she is polite and kind. Pharaoh attempts to find work at a local shop, but the owner, after giving him a strange look, refuses to hire him. Hungry and penniless, Pharaoh finally finds a bar where he starts eating the complimentary snacks provided for customers. Being a good-looking man, he catches the attention of a woman sitting nearby, who starts asking him questions about his stay and work. Nervously, Pharaoh answers indirectly, which confuses and annoys the woman, leading her to leave abruptly. Soon after, another woman, who seems desperate for attractive men, sits beside him and learns that he needs a place to stay for the night. Later, we see Pharaoh arriving at an apartment with Peta, the woman from the bar. As they enter, Pharaoh notices a familiar face. Diane, the woman who had driven the arrogant man earlier, is asleep on the couch. Peta soon appears in revealing clothes, attempting to seduce Pharaoh. However, he makes an excuse, hinting that he might be gay, and they both eventually fall asleep. Unable to sleep due to Peta's snoring, Pharaoh steps outside and takes a closer look at Diane, inadvertently waking her up. Startled and frightened by the sight of a stranger, Diane calls for Peta, who immediately throws Pharaoh out of the apartment. Despite this, it's later revealed that both women found Pharaoh attractive. While Pharaoh is wandering the streets alone, two thugs attempt to rob him. However, he manages to fend them off with a punch and quickly escapes, hiding in a fire escape of an apartment building. Unfortunately, his situation worsens when a woman spots him and calls the cops. Pharaoh is apprehended by the police and taken to a local jail cell. The police officer on duty gives Pharaoh 50 cents to make his one phone call, which he uses to instruct his assistant to buy $50 million worth of shares. While in the cell, Pharaoh encounters a notorious criminal who begins to taunt him, leading to a physical altercation. The police intervene, removing the other man from the cell. This experience is overwhelming for Pharaoh, a man used to power and control. Yet, he recalls the promise he made to his father, which gives him the strength to endure. The next morning, Pharaoh is awakened by the jail guard, who informs him that he's free to go. Still hungry, Pharaoh asks if he can stay until breakfast, but the cops ignore his request and release him after verifying that the thugs who attacked him had been arrested, proving his story true. Desperate and famished, Pharaoh enters a store and attempts to trade his 50 cents and a pack of condoms for food, but his efforts are in vain. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman from earlier is seen walking back to her house, feeling uneasy as a creepy man follows her. She nervously knocks on her door, calling for her mother, and is relieved once she's inside. Her mother suggests she meet a man who's interested in dating her, but she refuses, clearly traumatized by something in her past that makes her afraid of dating. Later that night, Pharaoh, sitting on a bench, encounters a strange woman who eventually drives him away. The next morning, after sleeping on a park bench, Pharaoh continues his search for food. He approaches a hot dog stand, asking for something to eat with his 50 cents. The stall owner, recognizing his desperation, gives him a hot dog for free, refusing to take his money. While searching for a job in the newspaper, Pharaoh is caught off guard and hit by a vehicle. The driver, hearing Pharaoh's story, decides to help him out and takes him to his boss's house, who happens to be looking for a driver. Upon arriving, Pharaoh encounters Mr. Curtis, the boss, and his wife in the middle of an argument. To Pharaoh's surprise, Mr. Curtis is the same arrogant man he encountered on the plane to New York. Mr. Curtis offers Pharaoh $600 for driving and other duties. Meanwhile, Mrs. Curtis is clearly attracted to Pharaoh. Suddenly, their spoiled daughter arrives, asking for $500 to buy clothes, which Mr. Curtis gives her without hesitation. Despite Mr. Curtis asking for references and dismissing him, his wife hires Pharaoh as a bartender for the night. That evening, Pharaoh faces a barrage of disrespect and mistreatment from the party guests, making his task even more challenging. He is also instructed to drive a drunk man home. During the drive, Pharaoh calls his assistant and instructs him to give each of his employees a $5,000 bonus, having seen on the news that they had nearly defeated a man in court who had sued them for a mysterious reason. Upon returning to the Curtis household, Pharaoh heads to his room, only to find Mrs. Curtis waiting for him, clearly hoping for a romantic encounter. Just as things begin to heat up, the drunk daughter also arrives, attempting to seduce Pharaoh, which forces Mrs. Curtis to hide under the bed. To make matters worse, Mr. Curtis knocks on the door, prompting the daughter to hide in the closet. Mr. Curtis, oblivious to the situation, sits on the bed and asks Pharaoh to join him. When Mr. Curtis makes advances toward Pharaoh, he quickly invents a story about having a communicable disease, causing Mr. Curtis to hastily leave the room. Pharaoh then asks the daughter to leave, after which Mrs. Curtis emerges with a mischievous smile. The next morning, even the family dog tries to mate with Pharaoh's leg, solidifying the impression that the entire family is desperate for his attention. Later, Pharaoh arrives at his boss's office to assist, only to be surprised by the presence of Diane, the same woman he met at Peeta's apartment. Diane tries to brush off the encounter, but the rest of the office is clearly impressed by Pharaoh's charm. The next morning, flowers appear on Diane's desk, and she suddenly receives a call from the boss asking her to bring his briefcase, which he left at the office, to his house. Reluctantly, despite having a funeral to attend, she complies. At the boss's house, Pharaoh is surprised to see Diane, and the boss asks Pharaoh to drop her off at the funeral after their meeting. In the car, Pharaoh looks at Diane through the mirror, and she scolds him for it. They finally reach the funeral of her relative, whom she never liked, and they share a laugh at the priest's antics. After the funeral, Pharaoh invites Diane for coffee, as it's the only thing he can afford at the moment. She agrees, but their conversation starts off awkwardly. Pharaoh smooths things over and suggests she start dating again, as she reveals her husband, David, passed away 9 years ago. Their conversation lasts for about 2 hours, and they seem genuinely interested in each other. Diane also reveals that she has wanted to leave her job for a long time because the boss is terrible. She even offers to lend Pharaoh some money to help him out, but he declines, saying he can manage. Before leaving her at her parents' house, they share a kiss while her parents watch from the living room window. They also decide to go on a date the following Tuesday. However, her parents are unhappy that the man she's dating is just an ordinary chauffeur. The next day, Diane goes on the date with Pharaoh while juggling her work projects, as Mr. Curtis assigned her extra tasks coinciding with the date. Despite this, Pharaoh and Diane enjoy each other's company. A few days later, Mr. Curtis's daughter visits the office, leading Mr. Curtis to call Pharaoh into his office and fire him, accusing him of doing something inappropriate with his daughter. The daughter, of course, is lying to get back at Pharaoh for rejecting her advances. Diane can't hold back and curses in front of everyone, shocking the entire office. They leave the office together, and Diane asks Pharaoh to have dinner with her parents, to which he agrees. At the dinner table, Pharaoh reveals the truth about being fired, which worries Diane's parents. They talk to her privately, concerned about Pharaoh not having a job, unaware that he's actually a billionaire. During dinner, Pharaoh mentions he might leave for California soon, which somewhat relieves her parents. Afterward, Pharaoh and Diane take a walk, enjoying ice cream together. Later, Diane calls her friend Peta and tells her about her relationship with Pharaoh, which surprises Peta. Pharaoh returns to Mr. Curtis's house to collect his things and say goodbye to his wife. The following day, Diane proposes the idea of opening a new agency together with the money she has saved over the years, but only if Pharaoh becomes her partner. They discuss the business, and Pharaoh suggests a great plan for the agency, to which they both agree. It becomes clear that love is blossoming between them, and as they celebrate their new venture, Pharaoh reveals to Diane that he's never met anyone like her before. However, Diane seems uncomfortable and shares a story about the days she searched for the reason behind her husband's death, which led to a terrible encounter with someone. Pharaoh comforts her, and the scene transitions to 2 weeks later, where their agency is generating significant revenue and profits. While sitting in a park, Pharaoh mentions that he might leave soon, but Diane suggests opening the agency in California instead. Pharaoh looks concerned about her business here. He later receives a call from his assistant, learning that if he doesn't show up in court this time, the company will lose control. As they sit and watch fighter planes, Diane expresses her love for Pharaoh. On the court date, the judge gives them a deadline of Monday. If Pharaoh doesn't make it to court on Monday, he'll lose control of the company. The scene shifts to Pharaoh's assistant standing before the judge, with Pharaoh nowhere in sight. Just as the opposing team is about to win the case, Pharaoh arrives, and it takes only a moment to confirm his identity, securing their victory. He returns to meet Diane, but when she asks where he was, he remains silent, keeping it a secret. This leads to Diane running out of the office, followed by Pharaoh, but in the heat of the moment, she can't be stopped. Pharaoh repeatedly calls her parents' house as she dropped her phone in the mud earlier, but her mother doesn't inform her of the calls. Finally, Diane arrives at the office, but this time Pharaoh is gone, seemingly for good. Meanwhile, the man who helped Pharaoh get a job reveals to Mr. Curtis that Pharaoh is actually Pharaoh Olivetti, the billionaire, and that he had given him a check for $50,000. In California, Pharaoh confides in his mother about Diane, who encourages him to meet her at least once. Pharaoh explains the situation to Diane, though he doesn't mention his billionaire status. They share a passionate kiss, and the night is filled with romantic moments. Diane doesn't want him to leave and asks if she can visit him in California. Pharaoh, in turn, invites her to come with him, making her dream come true. He also suggests they distribute their company shares to the agents, a gesture that touches Diane deeply. They finally set off for California, with the truth about Pharaoh's wealth still a secret. Upon arrival, the real Claude, Pharaoh's driver, picks them up, leaving Diane confused. It is then that Pharaoh reveals the truth: he is Pharaoh Olivetti, the billionaire. The revelation is shocking for Diane, but as they reach Pharaoh's grand mansion, she begins to feel a mix of excitement and disbelief. As they explore the mansion, Diane mentions her intention to look for a job, but Pharaoh has other plans. He expresses his deep love for her, reminding her that just as she made him her business partner in everything she had left, he now wants to make her his partner in everything he possesses. Diane smiles, her heart full of love, and they share a passionate kiss. The movie concludes with a grand wedding, where they exchange vows in front of everyone they know. Their love and passion lead them to a life filled with happiness, unity, and everlasting love. A Secret Promise offers a captivating blend of romance, deception, and drama. While the plot may seem familiar, it's the strong performances and unexpected twists that truly bring the story to life. The chemistry between the leads is undeniable, making their transformation from strangers to lovers an engaging journey. Although the pacing lags at times and a few plot points are predictable, the film ultimately delivers a heartwarming message about love that transcends wealth and status. We'd love to hear your thoughts on A Secret Promise. Share your opinions in the comments below and let us know which movie you'd like us to recap next. If this video made you smile, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell icon to stay in the loop with all our latest recaps and reviews. Your support helps us keep bringing you the best in romantic movie content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.